There are forces of nature in sport. Athletes who transcend the rules, who rewrite the playbook, who capture the world's imagination not just with skill, but with sheer primal power. And then, there was Mike Tyson. He wasn't just a boxer, he was a phenomenon, a hurricane in human form that tore through the heavyweight division in the late 1980s, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. He was the youngest heavyweight champion in history, the baddest man on the planet, a symbol of terrifying, untamed power, but the same fire that forged his legend also consumed him. His story is not just one of triumph, but a brutal Shakespearean tragedy played out in the harsh glare of the public eye. It's a story of poverty, mentorship, unimaginable fame, betrayal, self-destruction, and a desperate search for redemption. This isn't just a boxing story. This is the story of how the most feared man on earth became his own worst enemy. This is the rise and the fall of Mike Tyson. Michael Gerard Tyson was born into chaos. Brownsville, Brooklyn, in the late 1960s was a war zone of poverty, crime, and neglect. His biological father was absent. His mother struggled. Young Mike was awkward, bullied for his lisp and high-pitched voice. Fear became his constant companion, and fear, as it often does, eventually turned to violence. By the age of 13, Tyson had been arrested over 30 times for petty crimes. He was adrift, seemingly destined for a life of incarceration or an early grave. Salvation came in the unlikeliest of places, a juvenile detention center, the Tryon School for Boys. There, his raw power caught the eye of a counselor and former boxer Bobby Stewart. Stewart saw something beyond the troubled kid. He saw a fighter, and he knew only one man who could possibly harness that raw, untamed force. The legendary, almost mythical boxing trainer Constantine Cus D'Amato. Cus D'Amato was not just a trainer, he was a boxing Svengali, a psychologist who built champions from the inside out. He had already guided Floyd Patterson and Jose Torres to world titles. Living in semi-seclusion in Catskill, New York, Cus saw in the 13-year-old Tyson not just a future champion, but a vessel for his revolutionary boxing philosophy. The peekaboo style, built on relentless aggression, head movement, and devastating power. But more than that, Cus saw a boy desperate for structure, for discipline, for a father figure. Cus legally adopted Tyson after his mother passed away when he was 16. He didn't just train Mike's body, he rebuilt his mind. He drilled into him an unshakable belief in his own invincibility. He used hypnosis, psychological conditioning, and endless repetition to forge Tyson's fear into a weapon. Cus told Mike, "People write memoirs. I will write my memoirs in the bodies of fighters like you." He wasn't just creating a boxer, he was sculpting a monster designed for one purpose: destruction. In 1985, the storm was unleashed. Mike Tyson turned professional at the age of 18, and the boxing world had never seen anything like it. His first 19 fights ended via knockout, 12 of them in the first round. Opponents weren't just beaten, they were obliterated. They stepped into the ring already paralyzed by fear. Tyson moved with the speed of a middleweight, but hit with the force of a wrecking ball. His peekaboo defense made him an elusive target, while his ferocious hooks and uppercuts seemed to carry inhuman power. The inevitable arrived faster than anyone expected. On November 22nd, 1986, just 20 months after his pro debut, Mike Tyson faced Trevor Berbick for the WBC Heavyweight Championship. Tyson was only 20 years, 4 months old. The fight was vintage Tyson, relentless pressure, brutal power. In the second round, a crushing left hook sent Berbick crashing down. He tried to get up, stumbled across the ring like a newborn fawn, and fell again. It was over. Mike Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Cus D'Amato's prophecy was fulfilled. Over the next year, Tyson cemented his dominance, unifying the WBA and IBF titles to become the undisputed heavyweight champion. He wasn't just a champion, he was a cultural icon. Iron Mike, the baddest man on the planet. His fights were global events. People tuned in not to see if he would win, but how quickly and how brutally he would dispatch his opponent. The aura of invincibility, meticulously crafted by Cus D'Amato, seemed absolute. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, terrifying, and mesmerizing all at once. But the seeds of destruction were already being sown. The discipline and focus instilled by Cus D'Amato began to fray after Cus tragically passed away in November 1985, a year before Tyson won the title. Cus wasn't just his trainer, he was his anchor, his moral compass. Without him, Tyson was adrift in a sea of newfound fame and fortune, surrounded by sharks. The biggest shark was Don King. The flamboyant, notoriously manipulative promoter gradually maneuvered his way into Tyson's inner circle, pushing out the original management team led by Bill Caton and Jim Jacobs. King saw Tyson not as a fighter, but as a cash machine. He isolated Tyson, flattered his ego, and allegedly began siphoning millions from his earnings. The structure Cus had built around Mike began to crumble. Simultaneously, Tyson's personal life imploded in spectacular fashion. In 1988, he married actress Robin Givens. The relationship was a tabloid firestorm from the start, marked by allegations of domestic violence and manipulation. The climax came during a notorious joint interview with Barbara Walters, where Givens, sitting right next to Tyson, described her life with him as torture, pure hell, worse than anything I could possibly imagine. She filed for divorce shortly after, taking a reported multi-million-dollar settlement. The public image of the invincible warrior began to crack, revealing a deeply troubled and volatile man underneath. The chaos outside the ring inevitably spilled inside. Tyson's training became erratic. He fired his longtime trainer Kevin Rooney, the last remaining link to Cus D'Amato's discipline methods. He seemed more interested in the celebrity lifestyle than the brutal demands of staying champion. The fear he once instilled in opponents began to be replaced by whispers of his vulnerability. The monster Cus had created was losing its cage. Then came Tokyo, February 11th, 1990. Tyson was scheduled for what was considered a routine title defense against a massive underdog, James "Buster" Douglas. Douglas was a 42-1 long shot. No one gave him a chance. Tyson himself seemed barely interested, reportedly undertrained and distracted. But that night, the unthinkable happened. Douglas, inspired by the recent death of his mother, fought the fight of his life. He wasn't intimidated. He used his jab, kept Tyson at bay, and absorbed his power. In the 8th round, Tyson knocked Douglas down, but the count was arguably long. Douglas got up, and in the 10th round, he unleashed a furious combination that sent the invincible Mike Tyson crashing to the canvas for the first time in his career. He fumbled for his mouthpiece, dazed, unable to beat the count. The world was stunned. The baddest man on the planet had been slain. The loss in Tokyo was a shock, but the true nadir was yet to come. In 1991, Tyson was accused of raping Desiree Washington, an 18-year-old beauty pageant contestant, in an Indianapolis hotel room. The trial became a media circus, dividing public opinion. Tyson maintained his innocence, but in February 1992, he was found guilty and sentenced to 6 years in prison. At the age of 25, the most famous athlete in the world was behind bars. Prison forced a pause on the chaos. Tyson converted to Islam, adopting the name Malik Abdul Aziz. He reportedly spent time reading philosophy and history, but 3 years away from boxing, during what should have been his physical prime, took an irreversible toll. The aura was gone. The fear factor was diminished. When he emerged from prison in 1995, the question wasn't if he could regain his titles, but if the man himself could ever truly recover. Tyson's return to the ring was initially spectacular. He quickly dispatched several overmatched opponents and reclaimed the WBC and WBA titles, fueling hopes that Iron Mike was truly back. But these were illusions. The real test came in November 1996 against Evander Holyfield, a skilled and resilient former champion. Holyfield, unlike Tyson's previous opponents, was not intimidated. He weathered the early storm and systematically broke Tyson down, stopping him in the 11th round. The rematch, 7 months later, became one of the most bizarre and infamous events in sports history. Frustrated by Holyfield's tactics, including alleged headbutts, Tyson lost control in a way the world had never seen. In the 3rd round, during a clinch, he inexplicably bit off a piece of Holyfield's right ear. After a brief pause and a point deduction, he did it again, biting Holyfield's left ear. The fight was stopped. Tyson was disqualified, fined $3 million, and had his boxing license revoked. The baddest man on the planet had become a pariah, a symbol of uncontrolled rage and unsportsmanlike conduct. It was the ultimate act of self-destruction, committed on the world's biggest stage. Tyson eventually returned to the ring, but he was a shadow of his former self. The speed, the power, the ferocity, they were diminished. He scored some knockouts, but suffered embarrassing losses to Lennox Lewis and journeyman fighters like Danny Williams and Kevin McBride. The fire that had burned so brightly seemed extinguished. He was fighting not for glory, but for money. and the money was desperately needed. Despite earning an estimated $400 million during his career, Tyson declared bankruptcy in 2003, reportedly owing tens of millions in debts. The extravagant spending, the entourages, the divorces, and Don King's alleged mismanagement had finally caught up. The financial ruin mirrored his professional decline. The man who once had everything now had seemingly lost it all. So what is the legacy of Mike Tyson? It is complex, contradictory, and endlessly fascinating. Is he the terrifying force of nature who dominated boxing, the troubled kid molded by a brilliant but obsessive mentor, the self-destructive celebrity consumed by fame, or the older, seemingly wiser man we see today, hosting podcasts, tending to pigeons, and speaking openly about his demons? Perhaps he is all of these things. His story serves as the ultimate cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, the corrupting influence of fame, and the critical importance of guidance and self-awareness. But it's also perhaps a story of resilience. Tyson has stumbled, fallen, and paid a heavy price for his mistakes, yet he endures. He remains a cultural icon, a figure who evokes both fear and pity, fascination and controversy. The baddest man on the planet may be gone, but the complicated human being, Mike Tyson, continues to fight his toughest opponent, himself. What is your most defining memory of Mike Tyson? Let us know in the comments below, and for more deep dives into the legends of sport, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.